Katrina, for that excellent introduction.
Yeah.
And yeah, as Katrina said, we would like to keep this highly interactive. So the format of this presentation also, we have made it conversational. I'll be asking a question to Sri, and Sri will be asking a question to me, and we'll be going through the slides. But we highly encourage if you can ask also questions to us. This will keep us motivated and, sorry. All right, so let me first start with my first question to Sri. So Sri, first of all, welcome, and thanks for sponsoring this event. Would you like to just say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, terrific. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. For those of you who do not know, I used to work at Teradata for about 9.5 years, and then I switched over to AWS, where I've been for 3 years, and I'd like to call out a lot of my people who are here from AWS, my good friends Todd Heath and Steve Garden, who are who are former Teradata, who are here with AWS as well. So it's on behalf of AWS, I just want to say how thankful I am that you brought us here. I also want to thank my friend Katrina Khan, with whom I've done a lot of work in the past, and so some of what she said about me is actually true. A little bit is not quite there yet, but it's great to be here. And of course, Pranay, my partner in crime, we've done this quite a few times in different stages, and so it's great to be back here. And so to all our customers and our partners, of course, in Teradata, thank you very much for being here. And as Pranay said, we're going to do this interactively, question and answer, but we'd like to talk to you, more importantly. I hate the sound of my own voice. I'd much rather talk to you.
Yeah, so Sri, first question to you. Can you tell us more about this partnership between Teradata and AWS, how it started and where it is going?
Yeah, a couple of things, right? So we've been Teradata has been one of the, for lack of a better word, founding partners for the longest time. In fact, one of the first partners to actually come into what's called the AWS Marketplace. For those of you who do not know what the AWS Marketplace is, it is a channel through which customers buy your solutions, Teradata solutions, through the AWS Marketplace. You can actually, it's very unified billing, it's very easy to procure, and it's one of our crown jewels as far as AWS is concerned. And Teradata was one of the founding members in terms of being as part of the marketplace. That partnership has significantly expanded. Now, obviously, as you know, we're a cloud company, and we make money from the fact that solutions are on the AWS cloud, consuming compute and infrastructure and first-party services and whatnot. Teradata has been one of the fastest growing solutions on the AWS cloud. In the last 18 months, over 120 migrations have happened on the AWS cloud. One of the fastest growing companies on the AWS Marketplace. We have something called a workload migration program, of which you're a part, where we provide funds to your customers to migrate into the Teradata cloud. So progressively, the numbers have told a very, very important story in terms of a very meteoric rise on the AWS cloud, for which obviously we're extremely happy. Now, the story gets better than that. It's not just about the fact that you're in the cloud, but now you're actually consuming first-party services, AWS services, to be able to achieve many of the things that Teradata is very well known today in the industry for, in terms of analytics and generative AI, which we'll go into in later stages. So the partnership has taken on a stridency in the last 6 or 7 years, and particularly so in the last 18 months. Coincidentally, that's when we all three of us joined, so maybe it had something to do with it. And it's grown in size, it's grown in frequency, and most importantly, it's grown in the variety and the nature of the use cases that are being addressed for our customers, our joint customers. Now, as we're very proud, Teradata was first an on-prem solution, then became cloud-enabled. Now it's cloud native with all the features. Now, Pranay, I want you to talk to us, to the audience, about your offerings in the Vantage Cloud.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Sri, for the question. So our key offering on AWS is Vantage Cloud, as you know. And with this, you can implement different design patterns. You can implement a data warehouse. You can implement a lakehouse. In addition, you can also implement various operational tasks, workloads, as well as AI ML. As you have seen also yesterday in Martin's presentation, that we also have this powerful set of AI ML capabilities called as ClearScape Analytics. So with this, you can optimize your data preparation, you can ensure that you get the best models, as well as more importantly, you can convert all those models into business value by seamless operationalization. So what does this mean for you? It means your data science productivity goes up, and also you get a lot of time, faster time to the value. Now, Sri, I have a question for you. There are lots and lots of services on AWS, and maybe all are not in this particular slide. But can you just tell us on what these different services are about, and how does it integrate with Teradata Vantage?
Yeah, the thing is, AWS has over 200 services, last check. In fact, we were all having a conversation internally last week where each one of us was asking the other to produce a list. And there was a list anywhere between about 175 to about 225 different services. Some services are actually sub-services and cannot be counted as full services in their own. But there are about 200 services, give or take, that are in AWS, and it's continually increasing across different parts of the business. And depending on the architecture, you pick and choose the services. Now, in Teradata's case, there are roughly about 40 different services that are actually integrated into the architecture and framework. For instance, with Vantage Cloud Lake, our data lake is S3, for instance. And S3 is a core component of the Teradata architecture, which you see here. Similarly, for instance, AWS Glue is a very, very big part of the work that's being done with Vantage Cloud, particularly as you're looking at various data sources and trying to create data pipelines. Glue is part of the picture. Now, my favorite, given the fact that my bias is towards analytics, the service that's in contention right now, that's been looked at significantly by customers, is Amazon Bedrock. And Amazon Bedrock is a service, it's an API-based service, which allows you to be able to call on different foundational and large language models. Now, I will go into this in the architecture section in a little bit of detail, but there are 3 different parts to Amazon Bedrock. I've got to be very careful. I got into trouble, believe it or not, because I called it AWS Bedrock a couple of weeks ago in a different session, and the branding police, believe it or not, they came at me with a fury that I couldn't believe. So once bitten, twice shy, it's Amazon Bedrock, and I'm sure AWS, somebody is listening somewhere, so I'd better be careful. So these are some of the services we have as part of the overall Amazon Bedrock. Now, I'll go into this in a little bit of detail, but those are some of the services, right? And my intention is not to go through all of what's there. But the point that I wanted to make here is these services are extremely important in the journey from being an on-prem company into a cloud-enabled company, now progressing into a cloud-native organization. What does it actually mean? It means you're taking advantage of certain very important capabilities in the cloud. Auto-scaling for one, container orchestration for the other. Right? These are all important capabilities that are part of the services we provide. That makes Teradata's Vantage Cloud a truly cloud-native platform. That is something which the world needs to know more of, because it is, pardon the language, a kick-ass solution, which is arguably in the best CSP out there. That is the architecture, and those are some of the services we provide. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, Sri. So I think, as we said, that we would like to keep this interactive, and we'll be also asking the audience the question. So my first questions come to you. Out of the services, which of the services are you using, or which is your favorite service?
I can't, wow, are you killing me? And I think in some ways I showed my hand here a little bit, given the fact that my past is in analytics, and that's what I've done for quite a long time. Bedrock is a service that I speak about extensively. Amazon Bedrock, rather, is a service that I speak about extensively. I speak to a lot of customers about Bedrock implementation. My team, Todd and Steve, are constantly on many Bedrock initiatives. In fact, we have something called a strategic collaboration agreement with Teradata. In a nutshell, what it does is that AWS creates a bunch of investment dollars across different categories to be able to aid and vet partners like you to put solutions out in the marketplace. One of the solutions for which we have provided a lot of investment is AWS Bedrock. And so therefore, from our standpoint, we see a lot of activity with AWS Bedrock. But I'm not going to suggest to you that there is a favorite one over the other. It's a personal favorite, but it's certainly, obviously, in terms of architecture, we have different services we can offer.
All right.
I have a question for you. I'm referring to it only because I just want to make sure I get the right wording as I was writing it a couple of days ago. You and I have talked a lot about data strategy, Pranay, from the context of Vantage Cloud and how you actually enable your customers. I mean, you've been with a lot of customers in your previous life. You were a data scientist on the field. Data strategy, as you and I have talked about, has been a very important part of the work you've done. What is your take on Vantage and the data strategy that you're aiding with your customers?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a very interesting question, Sri. And data strategy itself is a very vast subject, but I would like to kind of answer this question in two parts. First is, what is the end-to-end data flow? So as you can see, right, here we take different data sources, like the raw data sources, and we use different Amazon components. Could be, for example, S3 or Amazon DB. We kind of use it for store the raw data sets. Afterwards, we are using Teradata Vantage Cloud to integrate all these data sets and harmonize the data, as well as apply advanced analytics on top of that. Now, when it comes to advanced analytics, as I said earlier, you can use ClearScape Analytics functions for advanced analytics, but many of our data scientists also use their preferred data science tool, which is Amazon SageMaker. So Amazon SageMaker is, I'm sure everybody is aware of it, but it's a very popular data science tool. And many of our data scientists use it to develop all the cutting-edge models. And we have seamless integration between Vantage Cloud and Amazon SageMaker. And once you have the models developed, you can import them back into Teradata Vantage. And we call this as bring your own model, BYOM. We also announced yesterday, bring your own large language model. So this is something similar to that. And once you have the model which are inside Vantage, you can operationalize it, you can convert it into signals which are going to be useful for people, apps, as well as devices. Now, the second part of the data strategy is how do you create trusted AI, right? So it's an also important question in current times. AI is important, but it's also important that it's trusted. And we see trusted AI as three parts. The first is how do you create trusted data? So we have different capabilities which will allow you to harmonize, integrate, and create this bias-free data. There are lots of capabilities. I'll not go into all of them. But for example, you have enterprise feature store, you have in-database data preparation. So all these functionalities will help you to do all the data preparation within Vantage so that your private, your very confidential data, like the PII, is not kind of going everywhere. The second part is how do you create explainable and secured AI? So one of the important components is model ops, which will help you in end-to-end management of the models, as well as it will also help you understand the data lineage, where the data was coming, what data was used in the model, as well as you can explain the model outputs. And of course, very important is how do you generate signal, how do you operationalize it? So AI has to be trusted if it is giving real business value. And for this, you need it to run in a kind of resilient way. You need to run it in a batch mode as well as real-time mode. So we also provide all these capabilities to ensure that the whole data strategy, end-to-end data strategy, is trusted and giving value. Now, Sri, if you may allow, can I ask a question to the audience?
I just have a very quick one. I think it's
ahead,
important. You made a lot of statements, very good statements about large language models, right? In fact, I don't know if you remember, Katrina, in our podcast, one of the questions that we were debating was, what exactly do you look at in terms of the future? And one of the things we said was, look, yes, large language models are very important. You can do two things with it, of course. You can do RAG-based conclusions where you actually take external information, you contextualize it, and you provide decisions as and when things are changing, as opposed to fine-tuning models. You can do all those things, right? But you can also do, it's important, where it's evolving, we believe, at AWS, is we're focusing and putting a lot of investment and attention on small language models, models that are very, very domain-specific for financial services, for travel and transportation, for manufacturing, and so on and so forth. So part of the evolution of the work we're doing in terms of data strategy with a lot of the customers we speak to have to do with, hey, what can we do that's very bespoke, that's very specific to your industry and your use cases? So you will hear in the forthcoming weeks and months, particularly as reInvent starts to happen, our flagship conference, you're going to see a lot of sessions, you're going to see a lot of demonstrations from our teams and other teams around small language models, and it's becoming a big deal. We're putting all that in implementation. You know that. You and I spoke about it quite extensively. I think that's important. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut the flow of the questions, but I thought that was an important point to piggyback on your strategy statement.
So I have a question for all of you. What do you think, as per you, is trusted AI?
You're polling the audience?
Yeah. What is trusted AI, right?
What is trusted AI as per you?
No hallucinations.
Okay, that's a good, I think that's a perfect answer. What else? Okay.
Like query grid, which really, one feature you were telling query grid as a trusted AI component.
Yeah.
So it goes to database by a fabric and it brings the data and you can trust that. It's like, this is one component. I'm also confused with trusted AI, but by looking this, I think these are the components you are telling. If data is coming from this source, by using those tools, those are trusted.
Yeah, so I think, I agree. I think we have different answers, but it kind of merges. Like you start with the data, that's perfect. You need trusted data sources, you need trusted data, and gentlemen over there have answered that, okay, you do not need to have hallucinations, or that's the output point of view. And I agree, it is a kind of an integration of like end-to-end, from input, processing, as well as output. So I think,
If you don't mind, I'll make a provoking and probably a provocative statement as well. The whole trusted AI thing, right? I think, yes, it's a nice slogan, it's good branding and all the rest of the stuff, right? I'm not questioning any of that. But I think we all, including from both sides of the fence, AWS, Teradata, partners, other partners, customers, we have to look at many, many things. For trusted AI to happen, there are a lot of things that need to fall in place. We need to do many, many different things. Now, I don't necessarily know that the two companies coming together are doing all the things that need to be done as far as trusted AI is concerned. It is a very loaded term, to your point.
Yeah.
And I think it just simply because of the variegated nature of the definition, I think we need to look carefully as to what exactly it means within the context of your organization, with that particular implementations you have, with the use cases you have to be able to properly define it. Because it is not one definition, in my view. And there are many things that need to be done for you to truly be a trusted AI company across. But it's the case for both AWS and Teradata.
Yeah.
It's no knock on anyone. It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I think that's also a great take.
Things,
yeah.
What you mean
things
by
like,
many things to happen to be trusted?
Yeah, good question. Starting with the data fidelity. How are you doing it? What are the different ways by which you're cleansing your data? What kinds of PII regulations do you have to worry about in different parts of the world? That's important. Not everybody has got the same PII regulations. Europe has got GDPR, which we don't have. American regulations historically have been a lot more lax than in certain other parts of the world. So how do you actually accommodate the different regimes that are out there? Then how do you look at explainability? What are the different things you have to do as far as explainability is concerned? How do you look at reasonableness? What are the different probabilistic values you're going to be able to attribute towards making false positives? Because you can never say there's going to be 0 false positives anywhere, unless, in very, very critical cases where, there's no failure is not an option. So what are the different things you can do? How probabilistic are the kinds of models you've got to put in place to be able to look at the data? Those are some of the things you have to do. And there are about 10 different things. I'm happy to actually, there's a great reference article that we published not too long ago that I'm happy to send. But my point is not that one person or two people will have an exhaustive list of things to do to be able to get to that trusted AI holy grail. What I'm saying is that organizations need to be looking at it to be able to figure out what they need to do to fit their bespoke needs and capabilities to be able to get to that trusted AI. I fear that all of us, me included primarily, we're forgetting what that definition is, or we're not thinking through the definition as to what it actually means to us and our customers. That's my concern.
So just to kind of, just to conclude on the trusted AI discussion, I think there was also a good definition, discussion what I had with some of my colleagues is that you can also see trusted AI as an utility, right? For example, when you are drinking water, you are not testing the pH or acidity level of the water. When you are plugging your plug inside the sockets, you're not testing, right? Is the current strong or less? You trust the utility. You trust your water company. You trust your electric company, right? So trusted AI at the end should be like utility, like the people who are using it should be able to use it with trust for their benefits. So a great discussion, and Sri, let's move to the next question. I have a very interesting question for you. Let's little bit go deeper, and can you little bit explain the architecture of Teradata Vantage Cloud on AWS?
Yeah, so there are a number of different components, right, to go into, and this is an incredibly busy slide, which I don't think I'm really proud of, to tell you the truth. But the core, and I'm not here to explain the Vantage architecture, which a lot of you know in terms of the core SQL engine and the different language-based capabilities that we have. What I'm particularly going to focus on, given the nature given the description of the session, is to focus on the architecture part, which enables you to do generative AI. And this is where I think it's important for us to deconstruct Bedrock into three different parts. Bedrock, so as I briefly introduced you, is our generative AI service at Amazon, which allows you to have an API-based access to that service. Now, what exactly does it mean? It is comprised of three parts. One is the infrastructure layer. So Amazon has got its own chipsets. So in addition to the fact that we have NVIDIA-based GPU sets, and yes, we do have AMD-based GPU sets as well, we also have our own chips that we've manufactured for training and inference. Clearly, the branding folks do not spend a lot of time in it. So the training chip is called Trainium, and the inference chip is called Inferentia. So this is the infrastructure that we put in place. This is the actual physical hardware that we put in place into Bedrock for us to be able to process massive volumes of data at scale and so on. So the first part of the architecture is that. The second part is Bedrock as a service itself. This is what allows you to be able to access foundational models and large language models. Yes, there is a difference between the two in the API. Now, we have our own large language model, which is called Titan, which is homegrown, which has got, I think, about 7 trillion parameters or some ridiculous number like that. But we also have the ability to access other large language models, Cohere, Mistral, Claude, and Meta, for instance, Llama's models, but we all have it. Now, what's the point of that architecture? The point of that architecture is to be able to give choices to customers. So this is where the evolution from the large language models to the small language models come from. We give you the choice to be able to pick and choose the large language models and to be able to contextualize it using RAG or fine-tuning, as the case might be, using these models for different, it's multimodal, so which means you can use it for different use cases and so on. So that's a second layer as a platform. The third layer underneath is you can build applications on top of that. So for instance, we have something, for those of you who know, we have something called Amazon Q. Amazon Q is comprised of two parts. It's our own digital AI assistant. So you can actually ask questions, natural language questions, which then, of course, gets processed and answers come back to you. It also allows you to be able to do code generation. So you can actually have snippets of code. It used to be called Code Whisperer at some point in time. And then, of course, it got branded into Amazon Q, which allows you to be able to write snippets of code which then gets morphed into the new additions to the code, new libraries, and all the rest of the stuff, and a whole bunch of languages are being supported. Why is that important for me to mention? It's important for me to mention in the context of the architecture that's currently in place, where Vantage connects to Amazon Bedrock through an API, which allows you to be able to access high-octane processing using our own chips or GPU-based chips like NVIDIA and AMD and whatnot, allows you to be able to access various large language models at scale, allows you to be able to then write code or to be able to ask questions from the natural language, using natural language to be able to get the answers you need. So this is part of the new part of the architecture which I'm focusing on today, which allows you to be able to work with Vantage.
Yeah, I think that was a quite neat explanation of what different generative AI capabilities, and I'm also glad to hear the name of the chips are also kind of based after fine-tuning and inferencing. Very smart move by AWS. Here I have a question to the audience. So audience, my question is, have you used or have you experienced these services what Sri just talked about, like Bedrock or Amazon Q? Or it is completely...
a resounding yes.
So have you used or have you experienced this Bedrock or Amazon Q services?
How many of you have heard of Bedrock? Okay, that's nice. I mean, I'm happy with that. I think look, if we were realistic and if we were honest with ourselves, it's going to be a while before these technologies actually come to the public consciousness. There's still a lot of complexity, particularly to the way we explain it to our customers and different kinds of audiences. We're getting better at it, but I think one of the things that we need to do better is to be able to take this architecture and make a corresponding claim to the kinds of use cases that it addresses. The business outcomes become very important. Once we're able to connect the two, that is actually going to make a lot of people understand, this is what Bedrock does. This is how it can be used as far as Vantage is concerned. This is how fraud detection is being addressed. That important connection is sometimes lost. We don't do enough of it, and in fact, I don't think we do much of it at all, and we need to get better at it. I mean, me included primarily. So we'll get there, but these are the foundation blocks that we have today.
So Sri, I think,
I have a question about this Bedrock. That you just, is it that any question, natural language question I'm submitting to get some answers, so it goes to AWS and use that Bedrock to generate the SQL, and we give the enough information in the question, what table or whatever, so that by that table name, column name, from where I'm looking for the answer, it will go there, and accordingly, if we tell, okay, I want this SQL, means like from to be generated for Teradata, suppose. Yeah. So it will create a Teradata SQL, and is it connected? Will it make connection to Vantage, or it will just generate the SQL, then it will go back to the maybe Jupyter where I ask the questions, and then I copy and paste to Teradata, or it will directly send the SQL to Teradata, how the communication happens with Vantage?
Your questions are great. I actually counted 7 of them, by the way. And very important questions, good questions. Let me break it down into a couple of categories. Now, the natural language English-based question that you asked, right? So if you go deep into the engineering weeds of it, what happens is there's something called tokenization that happens, where your questions are parsed and the tokens are created, and the tokens are then matched inside. So there are a couple of ways by which token matching happens, which allows the large, it doesn't have to be SQL, by the way. You can, I mean, query language, any of there are 6 or 7 query languages that conversion happens into. And what happens is the tokenization allows you to be able to parse the different parts of your questions into manageable parts, which then gets matched back to the corpus of the data. And remember, large language models rely on a massive publicly available data set, which then, of course, is contextualized by your own proprietary data, based on which the answers come up. That's how it works, based on the tokenization part of it. So that's how it works. Now, how it's connected, right? This is where Teradata has been working on the integration with Bedrock. There is an integration which is underway. In fact, one of the first things that Teradata did was something called ask.ai. They had ask.ai and other clouds as well, but on the AWS side, there was an integration into Bedrock, which allowed you to ask questions, free-form questions, which then pick the answer from the Teradata database, and how many widgets have you sold in the last month between 5 and 6 o'clock and all that, and it provides the answer back to you through that. That's the premise of ask.ai. Now, that's going to be expanded with the new integration into leveraging the native large language models we have to be able to answer more questions beyond what's there in the Teradata database, potentially bringing other data sources as well for contextualization purposes. That's how it works. I can go so much more deep into it technically, and happy to do as well.
Just want to precise here that in the whole, this process of asking question, natural language question on a table, sending the metadata to the Bedrock and getting back the SQL. The key here is how good is your metadata, right? You need to have good descriptions of different columns, because this is what you're going to send to Bedrock. So it's very important to have very highly curated metadata definition. Then only this would work.
And as he mentioned that there is integration of AI. In the VCL, in the editor, I have seen that one small component AI means maybe suppose in the editor, I'm in any Teradata system connected, and through that component, I ask the questions. So it is going from Teradata, then going to the AWS, and using the Bedrock to get the LLM and from whatever, and then generate the
as a service,
answer back to the Teradata. So that's the way it's connected.
Yeah.
And
And
something new I've seen, but I didn't understand that. So now
and I will also tell you at the end of the slide on how you can try this out right now. At the end of the slide, I'll tell you how to do so. Now, Shri, let's make a segue to the success stories. So can you just briefly tell about some of the success stories, and then we'll kind of deep dive into a few of them?
Yeah, I like these success stories here, and I think, I guess you can read them. But one of my favorite success stories is for us to eat our own dog food, so to speak, right? So one of the very first implementations of Bedrock that we did within our own services. So there is, as I told you at the beginning of the session, there's something called Amazon AWS Marketplace. Now, a lot of people, a lot of customers, a lot of ISVs, partners of ours like Teradata, list their products on the marketplace. Now, listings come in many different forms, and there are all kinds of problems that happen with listings. Sometimes the metadata is not there. Sometimes the HTML script doesn't get properly rendered. Sometimes the graphics are bad. Or sometimes, partners come and say, look, I don't like the previous listing. I need to deprecate it, move it on. So now what happens is when partners like Teradata come to AWS and say, hey, I need you to modify the listing you have in Marketplace, they have to file a ticket. Now, a lot of partners have more than one listing. Teradata at one point in time had 19 listings in AWS Marketplace, right? And we have over 130,000 partners. So imagine on a daily basis the number of tickets that get created saying, hey, I want you to change the listing, or I want to modify the listing, or there's some problem with the listing, I need a resolution for it. Now, how it happened in the pre-Bedrock era was that there was a person sitting in the call center who would actually take your email and say, oh, looks like there's a problem with the Vantage Cloud listing. We need to do, the graphics are not properly rendering, so how do we do it? So let's respond. So somebody actually physically, manually writes a response. Now, at one point in time, last month, there were 7,000 tickets which were in abeyance. They were just sitting there in the queue that wasn't getting addressed. And the SLA, by the way, on these tickets are about 24 hours, right? So imagine the amount of manpower that you had to put in place to be able to address 7,000 different tickets that are coming. So what does Bedrock do? Bedrock took all the information. We have a knowledge base. We know how to troubleshoot all these listings and all that, right? So we've got a huge compendium of answers to the questions that we think you might ask. So what Bedrock did was to scour the knowledge base, take the questions that were being asked in these emails, compare the knowledge base to see which appropriate answer to select, scripted an email, and wrote that out back to the customers within 2 hours. And today, on queue, there are about 6 tickets that are there that haven't been resolved. This is a power of a service like Bedrock. You're actually able to automate the kinds of answers that are meaningful, that are impactful to the customers, right? So this is a classic example of how implementation with Bedrock works. And of course, we have tons of customer examples. We have over 47 dedicated use cases coming out of the generative AI field that we can talk to. But some of these, I know, Pranay, you've done a lot of work on. Can you tell from your standpoint what are the different kinds of use cases you see?
Yeah, so I'll kind of briefly go through use cases just in the to keep in the timing. So first is this Mutual of Omaha, which is an insurance company, and they wanted to migrate and modernize. They were looking to improve the customer experiences, and for this they have used Amazon SageMaker to develop predictive models which will predict the customer behavior so that the right offer can be proposed. And here they had to do a migration to Vantage Cloud Lake, and this was a very efficient Vantage Cloud Lake migration. It was just done in 6 weeks, and here they have also benefited by purchasing some of the services through AWS Marketplace, which Sri just referred to. Now, the second use case comes from one of the automotive manufacturing. So this was use case to detect anomalies on a manufacturing line, and this is one of the largest automobile companies in the world. And they had to detect errors in spot welding. So spot welding is a very mechanical process which requires a lot of analysis of different sensor curves. So they had about 3.2 billion sensor readings. So just to analyze this data, we have used predictive models, or 9 million models, just to analyze the data, models specific for data preparation, and then 40,000 models to do the prediction on where the fault is occurring. And all this you can see that this is at massive scale, like AI at scale. This is AI at scale, when you have lots of data as well as kind of millions of models, and this works seamlessly on AWS as well as Vantage Cloud. Now, I would like to also just briefly ask Sri that what are the upcoming use cases for generative AI, which you are seeing in the market?
Yeah, so one of the big things, and my intention is not to go through this entire list here, but I think there are a few things that are very important. I was in conversation with a large drug manufacturer out of Europe, and one of the things that they are using Amazon, not just Amazon's AI services, but also the native analytic services in SageMaker and so on to figure out bespoke medicines. How are we going to be able to use protein structures, for instance, to be able to figure out a therapeutic plan for you as and when you have various kinds of diseases and all that. So for instance, a lot of people have got cancer, different kinds of cancers. Different kind of cancers impact people in different ways, for instance. I mean, there are many mediating factors in terms of gender, age, your diet, and a number of other genetic factors. Now, the question is how not everybody has a one-size-treats-all approach is impossible, right? So how do you take all these different metrics into consideration to be able to create a treatment plan that is very specific to you? That is a big part of the work that we're doing with a lot of pharma companies. We're doing a lot of work in manufacturing companies in terms of, how do you do quality designs? How do you do quality checks? How do you reduce the total number of defects? And so on. So these are some of the use cases, and of course, we'll make all these things available. But these are some of the things which keep us awake, keep us happy, keep us excited, and quite frankly, hopefully provide the kind of value that we hope to provide to our customers by addressing these kinds of business outcomes.
Yeah. Sri, a quick question to the audience. So if you to pick up one use case out of these categories, like personalized customer experience, boosting employee productivity, content creation, or improving business operation, what would be your pick? What is the most important for you, for your organization? There has to be one, right? Sri?
Look, again, all my personal biases come into play here, right? And for me, it's bespoke medicines. What kinds of treatment plans that you provide? Not just from the standpoint of medicines that you provide, but also the treatment plans. How do you look at therapeutics in the context of all the rest of the information that need to go into therapeutics, like your gender, your age, your dietary preferences, your lifestyle, the geographical region that you're part of, because those all make a difference. So how do you create treatment plans? To me, that's some of the kinds of discussions that I've been involved in recently, for which we're using some of our native technologies for it. So that doesn't mean that that's my only preference. I'll work with all different kinds of use cases, but that's an example of some of the interesting work we're doing.
Right, so I think one of the use cases which we have seen is very much requested by different organizations is how to handle customer complaints, right? So as you can see, right, banks in the US, they receive a huge amount of complaints, like almost about 1.3 million. And we have put in place a solution along with AWS on how to do that. So is to analyze complaints which come in different formats like voice, text, and then on top of that, we apply Bedrock to understand what the complaint is about. We try to understand that what are the different topics which are occurring in the complaint, as well as we also try to summarize the complaints. Complaints can be very long. They could be like 1,000 words long, but we kind of summarize it so that it is efficiently understood, and then we kind of connect it with customer 360 degree to operationalize it. I think this is very important to operationalize it, because you can use the magic of LLMs, but if you do not operationalize it, if you do not connect it to customer 360 degree, you are not resolving the complaints, it doesn't lead to any value. Right? Now, as we are almost out of time, I would just like to first leave the ball to all of you. Like any questions you have till now?
I have a question for the audience. This is how I'd like to wrap.
Perfect.
Lots of information. But typically, it's where we start is always around the use case. What is the problem statement? What are we trying to solve? What's the business problem? So my ask of both of you is, where can this audience go to get ideas around specific use cases?
Perfect. So this comes to the slide on call to action. So I would highly recommend you to just scan this barcodes. The first one will take you to ClearScape Analytics Experience. ClearScape Analytics Experience is our platform where you will see a list of 80 plus AI ML demos. Many of them also show you the integration between ClearScape and AWS services, and you will be able to try out. You can also understand what are the different use cases which are possible with AWS and ClearScape. And secondly, you can also go to the second barcode, which will also give you the list of most trending generative AI use cases which Teradata and AWS are currently observing, right? So I would highly recommend you to scan these barcodes and, of course, come to Katrina, come to us for any further questions.
Perfect.
Hey, on a personal note, I'd like to say how thrilled I am talking about all this AI. That Geoffrey Hinton got the Nobel Prize yesterday for being the first to do neural networks in physics. Now, what's the connection between physics and neural networks? That's a different question altogether, but it's fantastic that it's been recognized. And today's Nobel Prize in Chemistry, for those of you who've read it, was using AI to discover new protein structures, which I thought, again, this is an AI week. So tomorrow's Literature Prize is, I'm sure, somebody actually writing poems using Bedrock, which will get the prize for it. Very possible.
You never know. You never know. Gentlemen, I want to thank both of you. Pranay, Sri, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.